Hello traders, Nick Shaheen here looking at Canopy Growth, CGC, a cannabis pot company, probably the only legitimate company out there. I say that, I know people are going to hate it. I shouldn't say legitimate. The one with the best balance sheet opportunity, which I say with an asterisk because I don't really know for sure. Because at one point they said they had some sort of an off-books commitment because it's illegal for them to do a transaction. Anyway, complicated matter. They do have cash, or they did have cash. Maybe they used it, maybe they didn't. They got $4 billion for 30% ownership, 35% ownership by STZ, Constellation Brands. So it's as, quote, legitimate as a cannabis company can be. Now, the whole sector is very popular. The fans love it, and it's hard to kill hope. And they do have good reason to. I mean, it's a topic that gets a lot of commitment from those who like it, and it's hard, almost like a Tesla stock. You cannot convince the people that love it to not love it, regardless of how good or bad you think. So nothing here is a recommendation to buy or sell. I'm merely sharing the levels, and I've been pretty spot on with the levels on these guys. Even though I personally don't trade them. I used to trade Canopy Growth until the bottom end fell out. I used to sell puts on dips, but it's all a mystery to me. Just remember that in the US, federally speaking, it's still illegal. So it's amazing that the sector is still doing as well as it can, because everything is going against it. They need headline help, and there's no help in sight that I know of. Nobody's talking about federal legalization as far as the US is concerned. And I don't hear any more of other countries coming into the fold, but it could happen. All right, back to Canopy. It had a good day on a Friday. I can't remember why, but it doesn't really matter. It's in the price. So back here, I did a video and maybe a write-up and post on Twitter. By the way, follow any of these things I just said. The video to follow is free. It's YouTube. There's a subscribe to the YouTube channel and put the little bell to tell you that I did post something. There was a pinch in the price. The range went from this to that, and a move was coming up or down. I didn't know, and I put the possibilities. So down it went. Bounced off the floor like I thought it would, because the floor is a floor. This here, the last earnings bout was horrendous, and I had several videos that were perfect. Pick the bottom, book the top, and they were perfect and on time. I did it twice since then, I think. And here we are. So what am I saying today? I'm saying that if I enjoyed a 15% run in one day, I usually book it, or at least lock in house money and play with profits. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, but I'm going to zoom back out later. So I'm going to go into, this is a daily candle. I'm going to go into 2-hour candle. So 4-hour candle, sorry about that. The reason why I book it, because this was the last ledge it fell from. So back in January, end of January, they fell apart from about this level. So onus is on the bulls to take it out. At least, if I'm not long yet, I'd wait until they beat the Friday high. So this candle is indecisive. It looks like a doji. It's got a big belly, but it's still a doji. They had a high and a low, and then they kind of closed somewhere in the middle. So it's indecisive. If they take it out, they will target the 26. So why is that important? Because the 26 itself will then target something higher. But before I just jump in and start buying calls or stock, I need to know that there's a big gap open, and they haven't committed to one way or another in a long time. So there's no sustainable buying or selling. Well, sustainable selling more so than buying, even though this was on pretty heavy earnings, pretty heavy volume. So therein lies the answer to my question earlier. So the good news is, there's a nice bottom. The bad news is that this bottom, if it breaks for whatever reason, I'm not saying it will, it becomes a head and shoulder, and then 14 comes into play. What? You say? Yes, it could. I'm not saying it will. I'm saying that if you lose this floor that you've defended so many times, and what is that floor? 18.5? Just eyeball? I mean, it could be the last value, 18.6. Pick and choose. They have been lower, like 17.50 it's seen before, like here. But then it becomes a head and shoulders. How is that? I can draw it real quick for you. And the idea is just, you can put it in plain simple English. When the bulls do this, and then they do that, and then they do this. I'm not saying they should dashed. As soon as they lose the neckline that they keep coming back to, then it becomes you got a head, shoulder, a head, and another shoulder, assuming that this tapers down. And if they close it and then they can't, you've heard prior support becomes forward resistance. So this has been support, then turns into resistance, and this effort to recover it fails, and then they go down. How far? The technicians will tell you about this far, as big as the peak. I say maybe, but I like to look left and say this was the world ended and they got to 15-ish, you know, here. That was sour, very, very, very sour sentiment, one earnings after another, everything was bad. So I'd say they will slow down here if this happens. I'm not calling for this to happen, but I'm saying if it happens. Now, conversely, all of this stuff works the other way around. What do I mean by that? Okay, so earlier I mentioned that if they're able to break through the high from Friday, they might target 26. Why is that important? Because then I'm going to go back to the daily candle because it's easier to see. If they take out 26, that orange line right here, then it becomes a huge bowl and a smaller bowl, a cup and handle in essence. I bet you can probably come up with an inverse head and shoulders there, the exact opposite. So the bottom line is, call it what you want, draw it however you want. To me, it's a price action attacking a neckline, a prior failure point. So they tried to hold it, they fell apart, right? So we can call it resistance already. They came up to it, they failed miserably, like a hard line. And this would be their chance to come up here and then break through it and then try to use it as floor. And then finally, maybe freaking finally, they could do this in a couple of different stages. There'll be resistance here-ish, and finally they'll fill the gap. What gap? Right here. So this has been open for a long time. Not always do they close it, but this could happen. You can see I have a lot of failed attempts. Well, this one got filled finally. So not every attempt gets filled right away. Look at how far this disappointment has been. So this could be, yeah, that's good enough. This could be a bowl, a cup, and a handle in the making. Could be in the making. If they break out and use it as break out from this R, and then you use it as support again, then they will overshoot. How high? Just like the other story, as deep as the bowl. So if you want to be, I eyeballed it. Does that look good? This as big as this? Maybe. So this should be the theoretical. I think this is pretty optimistic. I mean, they were there not too long ago, fine, but there are a lot of lines to cut across first, and I just drew just a couple. One step at a time, I think. All right, so this is the opportunity. This is for CGC. I don't know if I want to go through other ones. The video is already 6 or 7 minutes long. MJ not as happy, although it has a good, as far as charts is concerned, lower highs. Maybe you can call this a floor. You know, I'm going to delete these because it's gone. And maybe not. We'll see. ACB, I think there were talks of like going out of business, and it's up 7%. So it's hard to get smart in these levels down here, other than to say, okay, on a weekly basis for all time, this is a bottom. It was well consolidated, but if they go out of business, they go out of business. I mean, you can't stop that. Nevertheless, you know, the dollar mark is still looming down there. GWPH, I think, is another, quote, legitimate one. Again, this one, if I'm long, I would exit based on the weekly chart. From a weekly chart, this is zone, it's plus or minus $3. You go, what, $3? Yeah, I mean, this is a weekly chart. What do you expect? Plus or minus $3. This zone is pivotal. So it will take work to get over it, but once they get over it, and then it becomes good support. So if I wanted to get smarter and get closer, this is a daily chart. You see, you've got a little gap below and a leftover gap above. But you can see it looks like it already triggered a cup and handle, so or a broken neckline, and now they're still above that neckline. So if you want to be picky about it or happy about it, let's put it this way. If I'm long, I wouldn't get out. I would probably trim some or lock some or protect myself, because this was a neckline that they took out. So if they do this, then they can do this and then recover the gap, this full gap. And then big failure point up here, definitely R. So this would be a better place to exit, provided this holds. We have the coronavirus to deal with, people. they're not paying enough attention to it. I mean, China, the growth engine of the world, has been shut down for 2 months. No end in sight, and God knows what's going on behind those walls. Anyway, so the whole market is in danger, and these will not work alone. So I'm just showing you the levels that are important. I think if they hold up above this line, you can find it on your own charts. The upside, the rally is healthy and higher lows, nice. And then finally another breach up here, and they finally get to do all that stuff that they didn't do before. GWPH is a pharmaceutical company that is legitimate. I think it just gets to trade with the pot bunch, but it doesn't mean it's cheap. It still sells an astronomical. Yeah, it's super high relative to the total sales. Given what I'm seeing here, the metrics not always accurate, so you can do your own homework. All right, next signing out. If you have any questions, let me know. There's a link down below to join a chat room if you want. There's also you can also message me.